After a decade of studies, public pressure, and push from the Bills organization, the Buffalo Bills have finally reached a deal to build a brand new stadium for years of Josh Allen AFC Championship games to come. While not the most anticipated stadium development, it's definitely been one of the most puzzling and intriguing pursuits as to what kind of stadium and in what location is the most appropriate for one of the league's smallest franchises and city that will likely never host a Super Bowl. In this video, we're going to take a look at how we got here, what factors were considered, and ultimately what the revealed stadium plans mean for Buffalo, the Bills organization, and the NFL. The team currently plays at Highmark Stadium. It originally opened as Rich Stadium in 1973 with a capacity of over 80,000 fans and parking for 12,000 cars. The venue was originally constructed using state bonds approved by the New York State Legislature, and it was one of the first NFL venues to ever sell naming rights. Unlike most stadiums, but similar to most basketball arenas, the playing surface is 50 feet below ground level, decreasing the height of the stadium and the amount of stairs needed to reach the upper decks, but contributes to the stadium's signature wind issues. Highmark has seen numerous changes and renovations over the years, but never had a complete overhaul. Modern amenities would be added such as executive suites in 1980 and 1992, a jumbotron in 1994, and larger new seats in 1998. Many of these changes coming about from the Bills' great success of the 1990s, as the team never lost a playoff game in the stadium until 1996, which remains the Bills' only home playoff loss. Even with these upgrades, however, the stadium still lacked many of the features and amenities that the new stadiums have and the NFL desires. The Buffalo Bills signed a 10-year lease agreement in 2012 with the state of New York and Erie County, who owns Highmark. The agreement included $130 million for stadium upgrades, specifically a new West Side Plaza and updated concessions and bathrooms, all of which were complete by 2014. The short-term lease, however, and only minor improvements, hinted at Terry and Kim Pegula's, the Bills' owners, strong desire for a new stadium to replace the 40-year-old structure, and they had firmly stated that the Bills will not sign a new lease at Highmark Stadium. Also in 2014, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo appointed 5 members including the Buffalo Mayor, the Niagara Falls Mayor, New York Lieutenant Governor, the President of the Empire State Development Corporation, and one other to a study board to research the feasibility of a new stadium. And 7 months later, Erie County appointed their own 7 members to the board, including future New York Governor Kathy Hochul, a native of Buffalo who was working for M&T Bank at the time. The Bills' selections to the public board included U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer, Bills CEO Russ Brandon, CFO Jeff Littman, and a local businessman. 2 of the biggest questions in the minds of fans and Buffalo residents were, should the team have a domed stadium? And where should the new venue be located? Downtown Buffalo or Orchard Park, the location of Highmark Stadium? Once the Empire State Development Board tasked to study the project began meeting in April 2014, thoughts immediately suggested building a new stadium for New York State's only NFL team in Buffalo's downtown or along the waterfront. Or at least that's what New York Lieutenant Governor Bob Duffy voiced publicly. Fast forward 8 years, several studies, a now winning football team, and a New York State administration later, and thoughts seem to have changed. A 2019 study suggested that an open-air stadium built in downtown Buffalo would cost $1.9 billion, while the same stadium built in Orchard Park would cost only $1.5 billion, $450 million less. The study also scored the downtown location higher overall. Fans say they preferred that location, and the city council even supported the idea. But Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown said he didn't want the team downtown and preferred the Orchard Park location as, quote, the simpler option. One of the biggest factors in the decisions being made about Buffalo's new stadium is the fact that Buffalo is one of the smallest market teams in the whole NFL, In 2021, the Buffalo Bills organization was estimated to be worth only $2.27 billion. Contrast that to the Denver Broncos, who as of 2022 are up for sale at $3.75 billion and are only the 10th highest valued team in the league. As the owner of a company, are you going to construct a new building that costs more than your entire organization is worth? Looking at the Rams, who were valued at $3.8 billion in 2019, they built SoFi Stadium at a final cost between $5 and $6 billion, but was funded mostly by Rams owner Stan Kroenke with assistance from the NFL, who were strongly pushing for a state-of-the-art stadium in Los Angeles. Their proposal also included the Chargers, who were valued at $2.5 billion in 2019, and moved to SoFi after residents in San Diego denied providing funds for a new stadium in their city. It's estimated that Stan Kroenke's net worth is $10.7 billion. Contrast that to the Pegulas, whose net worth is $5.7 billion, and monetarily puny Buffalo. The Bills are unlikely to receive an equal amount of assistance for a new stadium, and the Pegulas have already stated that they are going to be asking for a significant amount of public money. Unless the venue adds more value to the public, taxpayers aren't going to be funding a SoFi Stadium in Buffalo. And to answer the question about a dome or open-air venue, with a mostly taxpayer-funded project, anything with a roof is probably out of the question. The tax base just isn't there. Multiple stadiums would be proposed over the course of a decade, some in downtown, others outside downtown, some with roofs, and some without. But most were simply ideas written down on paper, and others were dismissed as the various people studying the project released their findings. County and city leaders also ruled against a dome stadium, as they frankly didn't see the point. They argued that Buffalo doesn't have the infrastructure to host the Super Bowl and doesn't have the capability to use a venue that size outside of football, and so the design for a new stadium didn't need to consider events that the city would never bid to host. It was also noted that the Buffalo Bills' home games have become known across the nation for ridiculously snowy conditions in wintertime that made for fantastic television. In January 2020, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell put pressure on everyone involved, saying that those are things that the group has to settle collectively and to address over the next several months, if not sooner. But nothing significant would go on to happen as the research was put on hold during the early parts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Once the studies continued, Erie County confirmed that a downtown location had slim chances of meeting reality, as much of the land needed remained in private hands. And with both Roger Goodell and the Pegulas putting pressure on having a new stadium ready as soon as possible, going through a multi-year legal battle over eminent domain wasn't something the county or Buffalo mayor thought there was time for. In June 2021, the Pegulas hired their own research team and Legends Global Planning to study and develop a plan for a new stadium. And over the course of the fall, many unnamed sources reported to local news stations about potential developments on the project. In August, one of those sources claimed that the Pegulas had already put forward a proposal that demanded full taxpayer funding of a new stadium in Orchard Park for $1.1 billion, but included an additional $400 million to renovate the KeyBank Center, Buffalo's indoor sports arena. They also added that they would move the team to Austin if their demands weren't met. But since this was all a rumor, it wasn't sure exactly how serious that threat was. On August 31st, the Bills organization formally submitted their proposal to Erie County and the state of New York for a $1.4 billion 60,000-seat stadium in Orchard Park, as was previously rumored. The timeline projected an opening date of 2027. The 60,000-seat capacity put the new venue second smallest to Soldier Field, but the Bears are also pursuing a new stadium. The proposal also included a new feature for NFL venues, as the design also had a 5,000-person standing room-only deck that could theoretically raise capacity to 65,000. The new stadium would be open air, which would preclude Buffalo from ever hosting the Super Bowl, but most of the seating would be covered from the elements. On March 28, 2022, it was announced that the Buffalo Bills organization, Erie County, and New York State have reached a deal for a 62,000-seat stadium in Orchard Park at an estimated cost of $1.4 billion and estimated completion by 2026. New York State would pay $600 million for the new stadium, Erie County $250 million, the Bills $350 million, and the NFL granting the team a $200 million G4 loan, which was the same deal given to the Rams and Chargers for SoFi Stadium. Given G4 loan protocols, the Bills would be required to match the NFL's contribution, lifting their burden to $400 million. The G4 loan would be paid back through revenue generated from opponent seating in the new stadium over the course of 30 years. The announcement comes as the New York State Legislature races to finalize the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget by March 31st, to which the stadium would have to be included for construction to begin. While a final design hasn't been released, it's known that the stadium will be larger than Highmark despite having a lower seating capacity, meaning there will be wider concourses and larger seats. It's also been revealed that the playing surface will be grass, and the Bills will play at Highmark until the new complex opens across Abbott Road, where State of New York Erie Community College South Campus is now. New York State will own the building and property, which excludes Erie County, who owns Highmark. The Pegulas have hired the Kansas City-based architecture firm Populous to design the new stadium, and renderings could be made public as soon as May 2022. Many of the developments on this story remain ongoing, and perhaps even the information we have already could change. To me, if the stadium is going to stay in Orchard Park, then it really should be privately funded and privately owned, like the Palace of Auburn Hills. A stadium in the middle of nowhere with nothing around it doesn't benefit the community or the state. It's also worth noting that Orchard Park is outside Buffalo city limits, so the city doesn't even have a seat at the table in all of this, which I'm sure is at least partially intentional. Once again, I tend to lean towards the downtown location. I don't understand why the New York State government is giving someone else so much control over taxpayer money. Kathy Hochul's counter-argument is that keeping the Bills in Buffalo adds monetary value to the state, and so keeping the owner happy is all that's necessary. The only drawbacks to the city location, however, are cost and timeline. The city and state would definitely have to put up more, but with a more usable venue and surrounding development, the tax revenue is likely much higher over the course of 30 years. And what's the rush here? Is it because Terry Pegula is like 71 years old and wants a fast return on his investment and isn't considering the long-term benefits to the Bills and Buffalo? I mean, that really has to be it. Terry Pegula must be like a Bill Davidson wannabe who wants to own and have complete control over his own venue but doesn't have the money to pay for it. That, or he knows that a stadium that only hosts 8 to 10 events a year isn't very profitable and doesn't want to be stuck with the burden of said venue. Nonetheless, Bills fans, I hope whatever the results are, and what you're stuck with, are something that you enjoy and get value out of, because you and the rest of New Yorkers are paying for the Pegula Stadium in Orchard Park. We here at LaBriche TV will be watching closely.